Yes guys, I'm currently in Lichfield and that right there is King Edward VII. I'm not too sure why his statue faces that way if I'm honest with you, because I've been living in Lichfield for my whole entire life and not once that I can remember have I ever walked down this path. So all you ever see is the arse end of it. Anyway, he's had a clean, there's no more pterodactyl dump on him, so I decided we'll do a video. Let's get into it guys.
On the edge of Beacon Park in Lichfield stands a statue that most people probably walk past without thinking too much about it. And that includes myself, because I'm pretty sure throughout my whole life I've never walked past the front of this statue. But it was built to represent far more than just a king. This is the statue of King Edward VII, unveiled here in 1908 while Edward himself was still alive. Which is actually quite unusual because most royal statues were put up after the monarch had died. This one was different. It wasn't built as a memorial. It was built as a statement. Imagine having a statue of King Charles unveiled today in the Beacon Park. At the time, Britain was still in what we now call the Edwardian period. An era often remembered for confidence, wealth, ceremony and empire. And this statue was designed to capture all of that in stone. The figure itself was carved by George Loafer, a local stonemason working for Robert Bridgeman Sons of Lichfield, one of the most respected stonemasons in the whole country at the time. The craftsmen worked on churches and cathedrals all across Britain, so this was not simply a decorative park statue. In many ways it was also a showcase of local skill and craftsmanship. The statue itself was gifted to the city by Robert Bridgeman during his year serving as Sheriff of Lichfield between 1907 and 1908. And if you look closely at Edward VII himself, you can see the image that they wanted people to see. He's not dressed casually or shown as an ordinary man. He's wearing a full coronation of robes, holding a sceptre, with the insignia of the Order of the Garter across his chest, representing him almost as a physical embodiment of monarchy and imperial authority. Even the materials chosen for the monument carried status. The statue was carved from Portland stone, which is the same pale limestone used on some of Britain's most important buildings, including St Paul's Cathedral in London, while the pedestal beneath it was made from Hopton Wood stone, from Derbyshire. What makes that especially interesting is that the base contains visible marine fossils that formed around 340 million years ago beneath an ancient tropical sea. Most people sitting nearby in the park probably have no idea they're standing next to a stone filled with traces of prehistoric life. Around the pedestal are carved references to different parts of the British Empire, including India, Australia, Canada and South Africa. Because in 1908 the Empire was central to Britain's identity, and Edward VII himself officially held the title, Emperor of India. These carvings were effectively there to remind people that even a small cathedral city like Lichfield was symbolically connected to something global. The statue was officially unveiled on the 30th of September 1908 by the Earl of Dartmouth, who was Lord Lieutenant of Staffordshire at the time, alongside civic leaders including the Mayor of Lichfield. You can almost imagine the atmosphere here on that day, with formal dress, speeches and crowds gathering around a monument celebrating a king who was still sitting on the throne. What makes the time especially interesting though is what came next. When this statue was unveiled, Britain still saw itself as stable, powerful and untouchable. But only 6 years later the First World War would begin, and the old Edwardian world that this monument represented would start to disappear forever. Without meaning to, the statue became a snapshot of the final years before that huge change swept across Europe. Even Beacon Park itself would have felt very different back then. Edwardian parks were often designed as formal civic spaces where people would promenade, listen to music, admire flower displays and encounter monuments intended to inspire patriotism and pride. Today, people including myself walk dogs past the statue. We sit nearby with a coffee or cut through the park without really thinking about the symbolism towering above us. Over time, the weather and pollution of the Midlands began to stain and damage the stonework, and by the early 2000s the statue was in need of restoration. During the major refurbishment of Beacon Park in 2010, conservation work cleaned and repaired the monument, bringing back much of the pale appearance it would originally have had in 1908. Then in 2013 the statue was rededicated during a visit to the park by Princess Anne. And then we come to today in 2026, where the statue has once again been restored. So whether it looks like just another old statue in a park or a recently restored one, it's actually tied to local craftsmanship, Imperial Britain, Edwardian confidence, ancient fossil stone, and a world that was only a few years away from changing completely.